Welcome to another episode of Lightspeed Investing. I'm so excited to have Mr. Stephen Orr with us here today. He has been immersed in the markets for 32 years, currently founder and CEO of Quasi Markets, joining us to share his personal journey as well as pearls of wisdom after spending so much time in these markets. Stephen, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Philip. Thanks for having me on today, man.
Awesome. I'm so excited because you are a pretty big TV personality that's traversed these markets, and I think the listeners have a lot to learn from you. So why don't we go ahead and start with your personal journey? I mean, how did you end up, finding out about these markets, getting involved with them, and essentially making it your career? Because some people they get involved with it, but maybe they turn away, right? It sounds like you have a strong passion for not only the markets itself, but you're really looking to continue to innovate and do bigger things with them.
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting. When I was very young, about 5 years old, and kids wanted to be firefighters and astronauts, I wanted to be a stockbroker. I mean, that's just not normal for a lot of people. And my parents really kind of didn't even really know what to do with that. They didn't, how do you know about this? I'm from Illinois, Southern Illinois, actually. And what's interesting is, down there we have corn and soybeans and hogs and things of that nature. And guess what? That's futures. And that's where we started the markets. And I knew in Chicago that was where I needed to go. And obviously, I went to school in Illinois, and I decided I wanted to be in the markets. But come 1992, I took a turn a little bit. I did trade the markets. I was in the pits and I had a good time and learned a lot. And it's interesting, Philip. I actually started out trading on graph paper and pen. I wasn't even allowed to use a pencil, Philip. I had to use a
Wow.
pen. Right. And then I
The
learned on
good old
sheet.
days.
The
The good
good
old
old
days.
days where you
Yeah.
got your nose broke on the floor, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, yeah, and of course the floors look a lot different today. I just did an interview on the SIBO not too long ago. But well, what's interesting, Philip, is everybody's journey when they're investing is different, whether that they go professional or not professional. And in my case, I went political. I ended up in the White House for 8 years in the State Department, and I ended up in a whole different level, but I was still trading. And I think that's one of the cool things that we should always know is when we are investing, whether you're not an investor at all, you are an investor. Whether you whether you go out to eat and you pick a nice restaurant or you take a fast food, you're making a decision, right? And
That's
I
right.
think those I
That's
think
right.
people like yourselves and myself that can help guide those people that have been there for as long as we have done this is always a good way. But I always say the same thing that everybody can be an investor if they learn it themselves and just take a little bit of time. And that is really the key is just doing it over and over and over and over again. I remember my parents giving me about $10,000 to start my education in the markets, and I think I blew that in less than a week. They were like, "What the heck?" I was like, "Yeah, that's probably. Can I get more?" No, you're gonna do it yourself, kid. That's part of it, right? But as I grew older and I started to get into the markets and understanding, and one of my rules of trading is everything in the world matters, right? So whatever happens in Japan or what happens in London affects us here in the United States. So we need to have a good understanding of the whole world. And I thought I had a pretty good understanding because I went to work in the White House and the State Department. But as I moved on, I ended up in the PGA Tour and NBA and NFL, and I did all the pro sports side of things. And I also worked, but the whole time I was in technology, and I was always doing one thing: trading. What's interesting when you're trading, I always tell people it doesn't matter what you are or who you are. Use that to your advantage. A good example of that, if you are a plumber, then you know what? You should be trading housing stocks because you know that business better than anybody. And so I took that advantage a lot, especially the political side of things. And I took advantage of that. And I think that's one thing that we need to understand when we do. Now, I've been in the markets for a long time. I've also been the senior VP and chief strategy officer of both money.net and, of course, senior VP of Benzinga. But roughly about a year ago, I decided that I wanted to do this on my own. I wanted to build my own platform because, quite frankly, I've been doing it for so long. I've been in the markets for so long. I knew what to do. And you know what? We started that back in July and got the game ball rolling around August. And here we are a year later. We have a full blown platform with AI, Web3, and pretty soon we'll have trading on it. And pretty soon we'll have decentralization from straight up Web3. So, what's cool about it is as the finance and the fintech world evolves, I always want to be on the forefront of that. Probably even trading in my Oculus, right?
Yeah, love it, love it. Now, just so our audience is aware, right? Because we are subject matter experts within the futures and commodity financial markets. For you, when you talk about the markets, has your expertise mainly been just with stocks, or have you also traversed, other asset classes such as stock options, cryptocurrencies, foreign exchange? I'm just kind of curious, where have you kind of laid your mark, right, in
It's a
terms of asset
great
class?
question, Philip. I did start in the commodities markets and the futures pits, and I'll tell you, if you learn that, you can pretty much learn anything. That's what my
Exactly.
mentor said. If you learn futures, you can learn anything, and they're right because it does help you with options and understanding time frames and constraints. It helps you understand spreads. But stocks have always been my fun thing. I have even on my wall today. I've got a dividend check from 1991 from Disney, right? My mom had an account for me. I wasn't even old enough to even have an account. Look, I think that's cool, right? The sooner you get started, whether you're 80 years old or whether you're 10, it doesn't matter as long as you start to understand it. And I think that is one of the things that I like about Lightspeed investing is learning the markets, right? You need to learn it the right way. And right now we have a lot of, well, let's just call it how it is. A lot of social media out there, very loud, and they're not the ones that actually have been in the pits. They're not the ones that have actually taken the hard knocks. They don't really understand the markets. And if they do trade, they don't know what they're doing. And I don't want that. I think education is the key. And I think places like yourself, Lightspeed Investing, who will help them, I gotta say, I don't want to say handhold, but giving them an upper hand, right? Saying, look, here's how the markets really work. This is why this didn't work. And let me show you a better way of doing things. And I think that's the key, right? And what's really cool, Philip, is that when you learn one way of trading, you didn't really learn it because I think the markets are so crazy. I love it. There's something new every day. And so I go, oh, you know what? I remember a market like this, and this is how you should trade, right? If you're trading the same way every single day, it's not going to work out for you, right? If you just learn one style of trading, you need to understand, oh, you know what? Interest rates are rising. They have been, right, and that's really good for the bond market. But as interest rates fall down, stocks will go up. Buying cars, learning those little key factors. You don't have to be an economist. I mean, and I am myself, but you don't have to be. All you have to do is take some time out of your day every single day and never stop. I think that's the key. When you stop trading, whether that's stocks or bonds or options or futures, that's when the markets kind of end for you, right? Because getting back into it's very, very hard. It's kind of like college. When you finish college, if you want to get your master's, don't stop, don't take a break because it's hard to get back into it. It's the
Sure.
same thing, right? And I think that's
Now,
the key.
yeah. Now, for you, what's interesting, and maybe you can elucidate this to the audience, because here's the deal, right? When it comes to futures and commodities, we engage a lot in technical analysis where we don't necessarily have to be wary of economic trends and, business cycles and things of that nature, because what is in front of us is what we have to get right, in order to garner, points that ultimately translates to profits. Now, with what you're doing, right, in regards to stocks, because they are more so related to companies and things of that nature, that's fundamental analysis. And, being aware of all the things that you mentioned, global economic trends, and just knowing how, interrelatability of markets correlate, that matters. So for you, be starting with futures and commodities, why was, it important for you to transition to stocks? Like, what was it about stocks that grasped your attention and held it? Was it because of the fact that it dealt with companies and you love businesses? I'm just kind of curious, because each trader, I think, has a reason for doing what they do and being immersed in the specific markets that they are immersed in, right?
That's an easy answer. It's charts, charts, charts. I mean, the very thing you should all learn is technical analysis. And why is that? Because price dictates. When you're looking at a chart, it tells you where the price of anything has been and where it'll probably go back to, because that's where other people are. We call them business zones or buy and sell zones. You're trying to figure out where other people are. It's interesting, Philip, whenever you ask any financial firm in New York, what kind of college education would you like your new employee to be? Yes, almost all of them have a finance background in something business management, finance, but they always ask for one thing, and that's psychology. And why is that? Because that's exactly what it is. It's your psychology against the psychology of everybody else. Are
Love it.
you in the right position? Are you with everybody else going up or and down? We don't care which way the market goes as long as we're in the right direction. That's interesting because we need to understand the psychology, and you can't understand the psychology unless you understand technical analysis because that will tell you everything. And I'll tell you, a great place to learn a lot of technical analysis is from the CMT Association, the Chartered Market Technician Association, which I'm proud to say I'm friends with, Tyler Wood over there. And what's interesting is when you look at charts, Bollinger Bands, and all the things and SMAs and EMAs and where the charts have been and where they're going back to, they tell a story. They tell a story and say, look, this is where the stock or this is where the option or this is where the future has been. It's probably going to go back to there. You can look at seasonality charts. You can look at timing. You can look at all kinds of things as you're looking at even when you're looking at options and you're looking at crunching with Rho and Beta and Vega and all the
Mhm.
different Greeks out there, I'll
Yes.
tell you the same thing. It's still technical analysis because you're trying to learn where you have been and where you are going. And I think you guys do a good job at Lightspeed.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate that. Well, I mean, that's where, the success of our outcomes are derived from. It's being able to determine, from these charts, essentially, since we come from the medical field, the way that I always explain it is, as opposed to X-rays, MRI scans, and CT scans, the only difference here is if you know how to diagnose these charts right, they become your own ATM machine, right? And that's the beauty of it. You don't have to wait until Friday for your paycheck to come as a doctor. So, but it's interesting because, I guess my main question to you was coming from that technical analysis background, you decided to really put your stake and hone, being an expert within the stocks realm. So that's really my main question is like, what is it about stocks that, made it so interesting for you compared to all the other asset classes?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, stocks, what's interesting is there are over 9,000 equities, and there's a lot of stock out there, not only in the United States. I believe everybody should have a foreign accounts too. It's keeping up with that, right? And one thing is, there's always going to be food. There's always going to be pigs and hogs. There's always going to be bonds and currencies. But when it comes to stocks, companies go up, companies go down. Some fail. There's new companies, and that's exciting to me, right? IPOs are exciting to me. Seeing new innovation coming into the market's exciting to me. Good example that would be Nvidia, right? As they're building new video cards, hey, look, all of a sudden the stock's flying high. Why? Because everybody sees those video cards or using those video cards, and keeping up with that technology has always been to me very exciting. So I like technology. I'm surrounded by it all the time. I build a technology company, but when I'm looking at technology, it's not just technology in general, but when I look at the fundamental analysis of a company, I'm also looking at how much money is that company spending in R&D. I always look at the bottom line and say, oh wow, they're really spending about 20 to 30% of their budget on R&D, so they must be doing something in the tech space, or they're looking for the future and building something new. That's exciting to me, and to me that's cool. I'm also grew up in a household with my mom is a world leader in pharmacy, and I love biotech stocks, right? And with these brand new stocks or companies that are coming out with like Eli Lilly, with Wegovy, and all of these obesity companies. Wow, these drugs can really change the world, and that technology, actually, in biotech in that case, is pushing the envelope. And so I do like that, and that makes me excited about stocks.
And so for you, if a company doesn't have that R&D, traditionally speaking, what does it tell you? And is it usually the case where a company that spends more money on the R&D is usually more successful?
Yeah, that's a great question and totally right. I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of Apple, they had not been innovating for a very long time, and the minute they come out with AI with the rest of the world, boom, the stock jumps 6%. I think that's exactly right. I do think that there are some companies that don't have to rely on R&D, maybe in the metals or in the oil fields and energy, but that's because it's consumption. And so, when it comes to consumption of users and people like us, we have to eat, we have to drive our cars, we have to we need shelter. And so those things are important. But is there innovation really in homes? No. Is there really innovation in oil? No. Maybe getting more efficient, maybe. But no, but when you see a new way of trading, a new way of living, a new way of interacting socially, a new interaction with wearables on our arms and our glasses, that's cool stuff, right? And I like that. And that's why I'm mostly into the tech stocks and biotech stocks.
I love it. Now, remember, at the very beginning, you have told me that ever since you were a young kid, you were destined to become a stockbroker because you had this curiosity, innate curiosity and passion to go learn about it, right? Two things. What was the impetus? Like, what was that one thing that triggered your innate interest as a young child? That does not happen to everyone. And number two, as you've become more immersed in your journey with these markets for the past 32 years, has it disappointed you, right? In regards to that same energy, curiosity, and drive that has, pulled you into this field, has the field, continued to, fulfill its promise back, and if so, why? I just want to know, what has it done for you?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a kid, very simple. I was before cable. My parents bought a satellite dish, and I got to watch FBN, better known as CNBC today. I remember day
Oh,
one,
okay.
the day it was
Okay.
turned on.
Uh-huh.
The bottom of the screen was going across, and I was like, "Why? What is these symbols? What is this?"
Right.
And back then, they were not in decimal points; they were in fractions. So you had to learn fractions, and I thought that was important in school. But yeah, no, I have never lost that passion. I've never lost that excitement, and I think that's the key to winning too in this space.
Yes.
If you ever get bored and you don't like what you're doing and you're
Yeah.
unhappy, there's nothing wrong with that. You can reset, but don't stop. Never stop. Keep trading. Keep pushing. If you make a mistake, as my father says, the only way a mistake is a good thing is if you learned from it, right? You made a mistake in that trade. Okay, I'll never do that again. And let me tell you, Philip, there's been times I remember my first time trading copper. I had my jackets full of copper buys, and at the end of the day, I forgot to sell some of them.
Oh no.
Not fun, right? I will never do that again, right? And I
And you
had
know what's funny, when you said that, I thought you said cotton, and I'm like, dude, cotton, they were nice and fluffy.
cotton,
You should never
cotton
trade
can be
cotton,
crazy.
right?
It is
They move
crazy,
at
I'll
like
tell you.
those things move at like $5,000 per little fluff.
And you never
That's
want to be on the wrong
all.
side of a position. Like say it's a lock limit up or lock limit down. You're on the wrong side of that. Especially, I remember those days. I remember during the Gulf War days when the oil was lock limit up 3 days in a row, and they'd unlock it the third day, and here we go again, another day. I remember when those crazy trading days of cotton, and I remember high grade copper, and I remember, my goodness, this is before my time, but I have a lot of friends that worked during the Hunt brothers time, when the silver went to $50 an ounce, and I think we're going back there again. Why? Because that's the technical analysis side, and you've seen the history of it, and you know what factors will push those futures up. So that's what I mean by learning from experiences and pushing yourself to never stop. I mean, when people stop, you're pretty much telling yourself you're out of the game.
Right. And you know what's funny? Like, I left medicine. My business partner and I, we left medicine because we didn't have the passion for it. It didn't make sense for us. I mean, I thought being a surgeon was the thing until I got in the environment, and I realized, I was like, it's not going to provide long-term fulfillment and happiness. And that's why I got out of medicine. But you know what's interesting? I've found that having conversations with, successful entrepreneurs, in all different fields, they love what they do. And because they love what they do, right, similar to what I tell my team, even though I'm blessed to work part-time, full-time, and overtime as president and CEO, I don't work at all, right? And it's because, not only do I love what I do, but I love who I do it with. And so that seems to be a very integral, key to success, right? Is loving the work that you do, so that, you're always curious by it. You're always wanting to be ahead of everyone else. You want to know what is the latest trends. You want to play around with the latest trends. Because if you didn't have that passion and it didn't, drive you to be immersed, you wouldn't explore and investigate those things, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I call it the ecosystem. As you grow in your business and you grow in your trading world and your life, Look, it's about the people that you put around yourselves. Most people think that there's a lot of criminality around the markets and politics, but it's not true. The majority of people that are in the markets are actually good people. They're good quality people, and you put yourself around them. And those mentors, I always tell people, if you're in trading, get a mentor. I've had several throughout my career, and because of that, now a mentor myself. Look, it's the same thing. If you put yourself around good people like Lightspeed investing in yourself, that do believe in yourself, look, the world is really an open oyster. You can really do what you want. As my grandfather said, look, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And
That's
I
right.
feel that I have never, I
That's
feel like
right.
I've never worked a day, even though I know I put some really hard ones in, because you have passion, you love for it, right? I know the word passion is a little overused sometimes, but the truth is, it's exactly right. It's who you are. It's who you're meant to be. It's in your DNA. I don't like gambling. I'm not a fan of gambling. Why? Because I prefer investing. Why? Because it's putting knowledge to work to invest in something that you believe in and using all of those things that you have learned over time, whether that's through your mentors, technical analysis, your own investing education, and using people like yourself at Lightspeed, learning how the markets work and in a way being able to do it for yourself. There's nothing greater than teaching someone how to do something that can do it for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and well, and there's a science to it, right? The fundamental difference between gambling and a systematic approach is that gambling's are randomized
Right.
and you're not in control of it. So obviously, you've been around for 32 years, and you were around when the markets weren't even available electronically.
Mhm.
So when you think back to how you got access to those mentors, right? Because for me, it's a hybrid of both, a hybrid at this day and age, right? Online mentors as well as in-person mentors that I was blessed to, network by putting myself in high caliber rooms with high caliber business owners, and that's kind of how these conversations panned out. And it was done with intention, right? So, for you, when you're reflecting on this, mentorship journey that has now propelled you to your success, how did you get access to them? What was your mentality, and how did you get into good terms where they would welcome you back, right? And you weren't just a nuisance, who would take away their time.
Yeah, it's a very good question. As a very young child, I had my parents had some friends who said you need to meet a guy named Jesse Curry, and I learned it from Jesse Curry Commodities out of Western Kentucky. And I drove literally 2 hours a day each way just to learn the markets. And if you know, the bond markets open up very early in the morning, and obviously so did the bean pit. And I got up every morning, right around 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning, drove straight to the office, had to get my charts ready to go. But I asked Jesse, I sat him down one day, he sat down with me. I was a very young kid, and I think I was around 16, 17. And Jesse has former Green Beret. He had about 50 years old at the time, and he was been trading. And of course, at that point, lots of farmers are in the area, right? So futures was a big thing. And so he
This is
set
in
me.
Illinois, right? In Chicago.
Yes, Southern Illinois, Western Kentucky, and he set me down and he said, "Look, I'll be willing to teach you, kid, if you sit with me every single day and you do this." And I did. What's interesting, Philip, when I look back on that and I look back at people now, they don't have that patience. They don't want to sit down every single day, good or
Commitment.
bad. Right.
Commitment.
And back then you had to write your orders up. You had on a piece of paper, a slip,
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
time stamps. You had to click a button where it time stamped. And when you made trades, you had to call the floor of the exchanges on cell phones. Not they weren't even cell phones, off the wall. You picked the wall,
Right.
but you called it, and you had a different number for each
And each
exchange.
what round trip was 30 minutes, so total was in
Yeah,
an hour
it was
total
roughly about an hour round trip.
to place it to place one trade, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
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 Oh,
Nowadays we just click the damn button.
today it's I mean it's a
Crazy.
fast thing, but and
Yeah.
I wouldn't have understood that speed if I had not started that place, right? But then when we started getting Quotrex and Quotrons and things of that nature, we got computers in the office, satellite dishes. Those things made trading a little bit easier. We still had to make phone calls the same way, but I sat down there even when I made losses, even when I made great wins, I still came back. I didn't stop. I kept going. I kept going. Even when I lost the big number at that time, it's 10,000 was a lot to trust me, to a 19-year-old kid.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
That's probably like, what would you say that's close to 100K
that's
nowadays?
probably like 100K now.
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't stop. I
yeah.
kept on going, right? And I think that was the key to my success. And a lot of people get frustrated and just stop and don't want to do it. I remember the frustration at the beginning of Bitcoin when Bitcoin first came out, and I had bought my first Bitcoin around $75. It was
Mm.
only my fault because I knew about it when it was under $1, and I just didn't do it. And I kicked myself, but I didn't stop. I still kept learning about Bitcoin and kept buying at around 75 all the way to about 150. I remember it fell and everybody flipped out, and I was like, I don't think so. I kept on buying, and today we're over around 70,000. So that's the key, right? And what's really good about all the markets, they always go from bottom left to top right. It's just timing. It's all of the differences, right? If you're a long-term investor, you're going to be fine. If you're a short-term investor, great. If you're a trader, even better. But what happens is you don't need to be a full-time trader just to make things work for you, right? You have companies like yourselves that can help you out. You don't need to do it 24/7. I don't even expect anybody to do that. In fact, look, you're a surgeon. You're a doctor. You probably know healthcare stocks probably better than anybody. You know when things are going to happen. That's exactly the key to investing. Is there's no better trader than yourself. I love it when people say Warren Buffett's the best trader in the world. Well, that is maybe today, but you could be tomorrow. Why not? There's every day. Look at Roaring Kitty. He beat half the market in less than an hour one day. I know Scott Bauer made $1 million in a day and didn't bat an eye. And that was the beginning of his career, right? That's exactly right. And you never know when it's going to happen. And why don't I want to be a part of that? I totally want to be a part of that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's about that, self-confidence and self-belief in your own greatness, right? I love it. There's so many pearls of wisdom just around success in general. And before we wrap it up, do you have any advice for mistakes to avoid? I mean, we talked about, the importance of grit, commitment, never giving up, sticking with it. But what about, some mistakes that you may have made that you can now tell others so that if they are willing to listen to you, right, with open ears, that they can avoid the same mistakes too and save time on their.
Patience. I think patience is the key. A lot of times when I make a trade, and I don't care if it's for a split second or for a long-term trade, it's about patience. And I have to understand why I made that trade. I don't just make trades because I'm trying to catch a falling knife, or I'm not
Intention, intention traits.
That's right.
Intentional.
I call it thesis trading. I have an idea. This is what my thoughts are. This is why I'm making this position, whether it's a split second or long term. And when I do that, is patience. Because sometimes I don't. And my mistake is sometimes I get out too early, or I get in too early, or I get out and I get in and I make those mistakes. I'm like, you know what? I know that price is going to go higher. Why didn't I just wait it out instead of taking the profit or whatever? That's a key to me that I always fight, and every trader fights that, because if you know that, then you're a quadrillionaire, right? If you know when to get in and get out every single time, then you don't even need to be in the markets. But what you need to do is have belief in yourself, and you said it best. You need to, and I think one of the coolest words in the world is know thyself. You need to know yourself enough to trade, know how you trade, know what you trade. And there are a lot of software out there that'll help you say, okay, you're a better trader at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You're a better trader if you're trading this commodity. You're a better trader if you go to the long side, and helps you kind of hone your skills and get down to the point where you know how to trade. And then when you won't even need patience at that point, you'll be very strong in your trade.
And so, Stephen, for you, being in the markets for 32 years, having these ups and downs, having, the traditional journey of learning, right, in person with someone, at this point in your career, what are you most proud of in terms of, you talk about mentorship, right? If someone was to entertain the idea of writing you a message and say, Stephen, I heard your podcast, I'd love to learn from you. What could you teach them the most? Where do you hang your hat on?
I'll tell you, the thing that I hear a lot of times from people around me and friends is my Rolodex, is the number of people that I know. And I always tell people, some people collect cars, some people collect baseball cards. I like to collect friends because, that is something that on this earth we strive to have. And there's a lot of good people out there. And I've made a lot. And, I tell people a lot of my friends are Republicans. A lot of my friends are Democrats. A lot of my friends don't believe the things that I believe or don't believe. I don't care. I care about them as a person, and their personality. I think we got back to that in a lot of ways and stop hating each other and understanding each other's thoughts and philosophies. And that's what makes a good market, by the way, because it's still philosophy, it's still psychology, it's still trying to understand the market. And I'll tell you, having the friends that I've got friends that were in the Trump White House, friends in the Biden White House, you name it, doesn't matter to me, because I learned from both of them. And the more friends that I have, the more that I've learned, and I get to glean from people like yourselves, Philip, that I'm able to say, hey, what do you think of this position, and what do you think of this? That ecosystem for me has grown exponentially over my lifetime,
Oh,
and as I do that, I've noticed that my own personal growth in life and who I am, and oh, that thing happened in the world. Okay, no big deal, right? I've seen it before. What's interesting, a very good point, was when COVID hit. I did a TV interview asking about what I thought about COVID and where we were going to go, and I said, look, based on the things in the past, I think it's about a year and a half. I think the stock market's going to go up, not down. And they were shocked, right? And I was like, yes, you probably think it's too long, but if you think about other things in history, I learned that from a history professor, right? I learned that the markets are going to go up, and sometimes in bad times, because people are going to have extra money. All the things that I learned, I was able to put to good use, and think of it from a perspective of learning that from educating from other people like yourselves and friends, and learning it from the market mavens out there.
I love it because, at the end of the day, I always say, no matter what vehicle of business you're in, doctor, lawyer, engineer, restaurant owner, investing, stockbroker, that's the vehicle of business, right? But ultimately, we're all in the people business because when you shake hands with Apple, when you shake hands with Nike and IBM, you're not doing it with the entity, you're doing it with the individual representing the entity. So I am so glad that we're on the same page about garnering social capital, the right social capital, quality social capital, and utilizing it to your advantage, right? When, things go haywire and you need a friend to consult, right? I like to call it your, counselors of war.
Counselors of war, I like that. Okay.
Counselors of war during distress times or during blessed times. And so, Stephen, it's a pleasure speaking with you, having you on. I'm excited to bring you back and talk about more about this recent project, right? Crazy Markets and the exciting things that you've got going on. To conclude, Stephen, if people listen to this podcast and they're intrigued, they're excited, and they want to learn more and connect with you, what is the one best way for them to do so?
Well, the website that we're building is quasarmarkets.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn at QM Big Beat. You can find me on Twitter, same thing, QM Big Beat. I'm out there everywhere. My name is Stephen E. Orr, better known as Big Beat on Wall Street. It's my nickname. Yeah, and look, I'm always that person. I've always said it a million times. Like, the problem with watching TV is that you can't talk to that person that's the talking head. With me, I'm always happy to answer questions. I love that. I love getting emails, and it's very simple. It's Stephen@quasarmarkets.com. So yeah, send me a message.
Yeah, and that's if they want to talk to you. If they just want to listen to you, where can they find you on TV?
Well, you can get me on Schwab. You can get me on CNBC and Bloomberg. Yeah, it's all those places are the normal. But yeah, I'm actually on Schwab on this Friday actually.
There you go, man. There you go. And are you always talking about the markets? Or are you talking about a little bit about finance and the economy as well?
Absolutely. People always ask you. I mean, the stocks and the economy go right hand in hand. I don't believe the stock market is the economy. I think there's a differentiator there.
Yep.
But long story short, when you talk about the economy, people want to know. Look, Main Street and Wall Street, there is a disconnect, but there's also a real connect when it comes to investing.
And you are the bridge to both, right?
I like to
Stephen,
think that, yes.
Stephen, pleasure having you on, and I look forward to bringing you back and talking more about Quasar Markets. Until
Thank you
then,
very
hope you have a blessed day and you take care.